You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to discuss something that I know a lot of Chicago Bulls fans, but not all, really don't want to talk about, and that's the chances that Zach LaVine is a Bull long-term, meaning past the 2024-25 season. We're talking about all that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. I'm the host here. My name is Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this, guys. So this is a conversation that I know a lot of Bulls fans aren't going to want to hear or really talk about, but that doesn't mean that all of them don't want to talk about. There's actually been I would say, contingent of Bulls fans that have, in the comment section over the last year, basically since the Zach LaVine trade rumors started picking up, that said that the Bulls should not be looking to move on from Zach LaVine. They actually should be looking to keep Zach LaVine and more so maybe move on from Billy Donovan. And so the chances that the thing that I want to talk about today to open up this show is, what are the chances that LaVine is a Bull for the long term? And by the long term, I mean maybe for the majority of all the 3 years he has left on his contract. And hold with me now. In no way am I saying that this is the desirable outcome, and I'm in no way saying this is necessarily the best outcome, but it is an outcome. And it's an outcome that, because of the rumors and things like that, I honestly have not talked a lot about. I actually did think coming into this offseason is that the Bulls are going to move Zach LaVine in whatever they felt the best deal was. Now, whether it be that the best deal included them giving up a pick, which they just aren't willing to do, that did not materialize. And Zach LaVine is still going to be, by everything that we see so far, on the Bulls opening night roster for the 2024-25 season. And so that opens up the door and possibilities of what if Zach LaVine is here long term. And the reason why I think this question comes on, and I'm not saying necessarily that the lineup makes perfect sense, right, of Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine at the 1, 2, and 3. Actually, over on Chicago Bulls Central, did a video on 3-guard lineups, kind of the history of them. We went all the way back to like 2006, 2007 season and looking at some of the 3-guard lineups there. And some of them are productive, right? There have been some 3-guard lineups, starting lineups, that have worked in certain cases. Now, usually those 3-guard lineups tend to work when you have one or two of those guys being really good defenders or a specialist in an area. And, we don't necessarily have that with these 3 guys here. But even outside of that, right, Zach LaVine, because of the contract, because of the conversation around him, and overall, it seems like right now, because the Bulls are not willing to part with any type of draft assets to move off of Zach LaVine, it seems like there may be that chance that Zach LaVine does end up in the season with the Chicago Bulls. And at that point, let's say that Zach LaVine does mesh well with Josh Giddey, which I do think is, like, when you look at Josh Giddey and Zach LaVine's skill sets, there are some things that can show there. When you look at how Josh Giddey creates, he's been in the 90th percentile as far as open shots generated for his teammates over his NBA career. And Zach LaVine is one of the better catch and shoot players in the NBA right now. He just is. He usually hits catch and shoot threes at a 42% clip, I believe is what it is, between like 42, 44%. And so because of that, there is some talk about, or some things that you can try to convince yourself, well, maybe this thing works. Not saying just because it's on paper or analytics say that it could work doesn't mean that it will in reality. But then there's that extra part of it, as well as it's not just Zach and Kobe and Josh Giddey. It's also Kobe White that's involved in that lineup as well. And Kobe is a player that hasn't necessarily played the best in catch and shoot opportunities. He actually is really good on pull-up 3-point shots and things like that. And, not to make it all about 3-point shooting. I guess I'm talking a lot about that aspect of things, and not everything's all about 3-point shooting, but, creating that spacing and things like that. And I think right now, with what we've seen, what we've heard, and unless that changes, is that, unless Zach LaVine plays really, really well at the start of the season, and fits in and doesn't get hurt and all those type of things, right? I'm on the record for saying a few times that I think there are more scenarios in which it ends with Zach LaVine hurting his trade value than necessarily helping his trade value. But again, that's my personal opinion. I know not everyone's going to share that. But because of that aspect of it, there is a little bit of, that concern of, okay, what if he just does not increase his trade value? And then what do you start doing? And I think ultimately, if we're going to talk about the chances that Zach LaVine ends up a Bull long-term, which means, and by long-term, like, again, I'm not saying for all the 3 years. I basically mean past the 2024-25 season. Basically, is he still on the opening roster at the beginning of the 2025-26 season, just to kind of quantify that in a way, right? So that's the way that I'm looking at it. And I do think that there is a really good chance. Now, again, I don't know if it's good for the team. I'm not saying necessarily that it's going to be good for the Bulls' chances of winning. I don't know any of that. But I do think between the way that Zach LaVine is viewed right now around the league, right? And then on top of it, that the Bulls are in this place right now where they may not want to give up any assets to move off a player of Zach LaVine's caliber, and especially if it gets to the point of you just got to take bad salary back, and if that salary is long-term at all, right, that could get you back into the area where you're not necessarily looking at it. And the Bulls can potentially have some cap relief, right? When you look at next season, going into the 2025-26 season, the Bulls could have $56 million underneath the luxury tax. Now, out of that, you also have to extend Josh Giddey. You also have to still field the team, right? So we'll see what happens with that. But $56 million, if you can move off Vooch's contract or anything else, that's still a world in which, you're adding probably veterans at that piece, or maybe your draft pick, and you're keeping a lot of the young guys around. But that's not in the place where you necessarily are. Like, I get it. The Bulls they don't like to be too strapped for cash, even though we're always strapped for cash technically. And then in the 2026-27 season, which would be the last year in Zach LaVine's deal, that offseason, the Bulls right now are slated to have $121 million beneath the luxury tax, that first tax apron. Again, Josh Giddey's contract's in that. At some point, you got to look at Kobe. You got to look at Ayo Dosunmu in that as well. So look at that part of it as well to start eating into some of that salary there. You got to make a decision on Dalen Terry, who I think would be a restricted free agent as well at that point in time. So the Bulls have maybe some cap relief depending on how they play things out, regardless of if LaVine, those numbers that I gave her, if LaVine is still on the roster. So, I think ultimately, if we're looking at the scenario that would have to happen for Zach LaVine to be a Bull long term, for me, the lineup overall, the lineup of having Josh Giddey, Kobe White, and Zach LaVine first would have to look like it's going to make sense for the foreseeable future, right? Because still at some point you're looking at that. How does Modest Bucilis get in the court, right? What happens with Patrick Williams at that point in time? Who's your starting center? Is it a young guy to where maybe you're not paying them as much money, things like that, right? So those are things that you're looking at. But I think it comes down to if Zach LaVine fits in, and does Zach LaVine still want to be there? Does it get to a point, right, with Zach LaVine and his representation basically maintaining the standpoint right now that it's not necessarily that Zach LaVine wants out. They've been more so focused on the fact that, listen, Zach wants to win. He doesn't feel like he's been blamed for things here. We've also heard that maybe he doesn't really want to play for Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan's contract's up in 2 years. Do the Bulls try to push it to that and then maybe clear the salary, or are they forced to? I'm going to say want to, because I think if the Bulls had what they wanted to do, Zach LaVine would already be off the roster. But what are those chances? And is it something that's salvageable? We've heard some things that, they're still friendly, right? It's not like Zach LaVine and even Billy Donovan flying out to California to be with Zach LaVine some over this offseason. Like, so they're making some attempts there. And I think whether it's by the admission that Zach ain't going anywhere, they're not going to find a team to take his deal, whatever it is that's getting them to that point, I do think that the Bulls are right now in an area where they realize, hey, this Zach LaVine guy, who's not a terrible basketball player, we're probably still going to have him on the roster. And if that's the case, that's the case. That's just is what it is if that's what ends up happening with this team. But I think that, there is that possibility. If I'm going to put a percentage on it, right, as we start winding down this segment, to put a percentage on if the Chicago Bulls, if Zach LaVine is a Bull by the start of next season, not this upcoming season, but 2025-26, honestly, with reading what we've seen and heard so far about his value around the league, I'd probably say it's probably still 45%. And the only reason why I'm leaning more towards maybe him being gone is only because eventually you would think somebody is going to have either a disgruntled, an expiring contract, or something where they want to add a 20-point per game scorer to go on their run. But I do think that is something that we may, as Bulls fans, may have to start getting realizing that there is a possibility in a world in which Zach LaVine is a Chicago Bull for long term. Take that for however you will. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Next up, we're going to talk about, so there was a rumor not too long ago, not really a rumor. We actually talked about it with Josh Lloyd here on Locked On Fantasy Basketball, that Jalen Smith was promised, reportedly, a chance to start or earn the starting role. So we're going to ask the question, should Nikola Vucevic be the starting center next season for the Chicago Bulls? But first, we got to get into a message from one of our sponsors, and that is BetterHelp. You guys know I'm a big advocate of mental health. I've told you guys before, I've had to go through therapy myself. It is literally some of the most refreshing things that you will ever do, and never let yourself think that means something is wrong with you because you have to go to therapy. It actually is a sign that things are right. But one of our sponsors is a great advocate with that, and that is BetterHelp. As a matter of fact, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that you love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you like, or was it lost in childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you like to learn? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, because your back-to-school era can come at any age. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out the brief questionnaire and get matched with the licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, everydayers, thank you for making Locked On Bulls your first listen every day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed or entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, guys. So I want to get into the second topic for this episode that I have cooked up, and that is, should Nikola Vucevic still be the starting center for the Chicago Bulls? Now, this isn't necessarily to crap on Vooch, right? Again, Vooch, 18 and 11 guy, basically he's going to be that for the most part of the season. He's productive. I think that ultimately if Vooch was able to stay more in the paint than be out on the perimeter, we'd have a lot different view offensively, Nikola Vucevic. But one of Vooch's shortcomings is defense. And with this team starting three guards, right, theoretically, and Josh Giddey, Kobe White, and Zach LaVine, the question remains is still starting Nikola Vucevic the best option for the team? And I think when you hear that talk that Jalen Smith may have been promised an opportunity to earn the starting center role, I think that comes down to the Bulls trying to change their play style. Now, the thing that I will say, guys know I like to talk against and for their own points that I'm trying to make. But one of the things is that you can't really hide Vooch, right? Even on the bench, the Bulls still shape up to be a team that likes to push the pace more. You look at Io, look at Modest Bucilis, right? These are guys that are going to like to push the pace. They're going to thrive in more fast-paced offense. Yeah, you have Torrey Craig and those guys still on this bench as well. So it doesn't necessarily hide a lot of Vooch if you do bring him off the bench. But is Jalen Smith a better option to start at center? Now, I know some guys are going to say, but Haize, Jalen Smith is clearly a power forward. He should start at power forward. Let's do that. I'm telling you guys right now, listen, Jalen Smith has played the majority of his minutes in his NBA career at the center position. That just is what it is. And I think also when you look at it, is that if you were to start Jalen Smith and Nikola Vucevic, I'm not saying necessarily that doesn't work. I actually think you can get some solid minutes out of playing Vooch and Jalen Smith together. I think it would fit a little bit better than Andre Drummond and Vooch did at times. But you would have no big man depth at that point. At that point, you're then running Torrey Craig possibly as your backup center, or Patrick Williams at that. If we have problems with Patrick Williams at the 4, do you want to see Patrick Williams as a small ball center? So I don't think it's really an option with how this Bulls team is currently constructed to operate and play Jalen Smith at power forward and Nikola Vucevic at center. So I wanted to talk about that because I know some of the guys already getting it typing. I love you. With that said, though, Jalen Smith is a player that does play better in a more up-tempo offense. Now, key thing, and I think a lot of the things that cause people confusion with this is more up-tempo does not mean run and gun. That's very different thing. Very, 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 very different things there. So please, let's not get into the conversation of thinking that run and gun is what we mean by the Bulls playing a more up-tempo offense. We mean playing quicker. The Bulls were 28th, at times 29th in pace last season, and we just have players that like to get out and run more freely. So Jalen Smith does theoretically fit that a little bit better. You also look at Jalen Smith with the creation of Josh Giddey. Jalen Smith is a career 33% three-point shooter, but you look at last season, 42%, much better volume. I still don't want to see Jalen Smith taking a bunch of threes. I don't want to always see him taking the type of threes that Vooch took. I think that would make him ineffective as well, but he's I think as a trailer, and because he does get out in transition, he's a better lob threat as well than Nikola Vucevic. Also, the weak side defense that he does bring. If our guards, our three-guard lineup does get beat out on the perimeter, Jalen Smith is kind of more apt to be able to protect the rim, even though I wouldn't call Jalen Smith the best rim protector. He's just a better one, right, than what we have in Nikola Vucevic. And that's what it comes down to, is that in certain areas that this team could be trying to play, and all this is theoretical, we don't really know what style for sure this team is going to try to play. But Jalen Smith fits that mold just a little bit better in almost every category. And that is something that you have to look at for as well. Now, in no way am I saying that absolutely Jalen Smith should start over Nikola Vucevic. This is for the nature of conversation. I want to hear from you guys on this, both in the voicemail line and from the guys watching this on the YouTube side of things. But I think when you look at Jalen Smith and how and where he likes to get his scoring in, it just seems to be he fits a little bit better than maybe what Nikola Vucevic does. Now, I think that Vooch could kind of fit in. Now, Vooch is a solid passer. You look at us trying to move the ball around a little bit more freely, the passing coming from the interior of Nikola Vucevic. If we're moving and slashing to the rim better, that could be definitely a weapon in this. So in no way am I here saying that adamantly, oh, Nikola Vucevic cannot start for the Chicago Bulls. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it is something that paired with what we've heard of the Bulls maybe had made a promise to Jalen Smith that he at least be given an opportunity to try to win that starting center position. Maybe that's the case. When you look at, we're gonna do some comparisons right now between, I want to bring up some numbers between Jalen Smith and Nikola Vucevic, and just to see where they kind of differ at, where's one stronger than the other one at. And I think that can help provide kind of more clarity on kind of what I'm trying to get at here as far as what could work better for the team, like, again, in the way that I think this team is going to be trying to operate. So when you look at it, for example, Jalen Smith last season had a true shooting percentage of 68%. Nikola Vucevic, 54%, right? You look at kind of more of those opportunities. Also, the three-point attempt rate. Jalen Smith attempted three-pointers at a 36.5% rate, whereas Nikola Vucevic, 25.8%. So you're gaining almost 10% more as far as willingness to take three-pointers. And when the team that's trying to create some spacing, it's there a little bit more. You also look at the rim defense. Now, rim defense, it's out the wazoo. When Jalen Smith is on the court, teams shoot negative 6.3% worse at the rim when Jalen Smith is out there. When Nikola Vucevic is out there, it's negative 0.4%. So still, they shoot it worse, but it just doesn't get it done enough. Like, Jalen Smith's rim defense actually projected in an 83rd percentile in the NBA last season, whereas Nikola Vucevic's rim defense, 47%. So that's another thing. You also look at frequency of blocks, right? The block percentage. Jalen Smith blocks 2.9% of the shots while he's out there, whereas Nikola Vucevic is 2.4%. A negligible margin, but that puts Jalen Smith in the 80th percentile, whereas Nikola Vucevic is more towards the 75th percentile in that case. Now, Nikola Vucevic clearly takes a more of an offensive load in that case. His offensive load, is that a pause? His offensive probability is 35.8%, whereas Jalen Smith is 27%. So there's definitely a difference there. And also Nikola Vucevic, much better passer. Jalen Smith has a passer rating of 2.8, which is good for 27th percentile in the league, whereas Nikola Vucevic is 4.7 in the 58th percentile in the league. So those are just things to look at. And not to say that all lineups should be dictated by advanced analytics or not. That is a tool I like to use and go to when it kind of makes sense. But I think ultimately it just comes down to that. Is Nikola Vucevic going to be right for where the Bulls are now? And that's something that I hope this Bulls team is looking at and evaluating when they look at who's going to be where on this team. It's that it comes down to finding the right pieces that fit together at the right time. Doesn't mean that I'm saying Nikola Vucevic shouldn't play for the Bulls. Doesn't mean that I'm saying Nikola Vucevic should not necessarily, I'm not even saying that he shouldn't start. I'm just saying is that you have to look at what's going to be best for where you're going and what your current personnel is. And there's a question, at least in my mind, of if that's Nikola Vucevic. But guys, please let me know what you guys think down below on that. Do you agree with that or not? Do you think that Nikola Vucevic still offers the best chance for the Chicago Bulls in that starting lineup? Or do you think the Bulls should take a look at Jalen Smith and to see what he can bring there? Next up, though, we're going to be talking about the Bulls and should they hold on to their vets by season's end. But before we get into that, we got to get into a message from another one of our sponsors. This time, it's Game Time. All right, guys, you already know events are better live, whether it's concerts, sports, or whatever, it's all better live. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. Game Time Picks filters out fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching at all. And then when you also look at it, they also have what's called the super deal. And it's a great deal on top of that because you can pick from an upcoming live event on the app, browse through the seats on Game Time Picks, and talk about the great deals. So again, Game Time helps you. When you look at what Game Time brings you, they bring you curated deals to make it easier to find your seats for a better price. Also, they have the super deal. They have seats that you can view before you buy as well, and they have their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection as well. When you look at Game Time, when it comes down to it, they have all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature on, and it shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout at all. Also, they have that lowest price guarantee that they will credit you 110% of the difference if you find seats in the same section and for less. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. All right, Bulls fans, last topic before we get out of here today is that will the Chicago Bulls hold on till their vets? Now, a thing that sparked this, and I partially had this conversation over on Chicago Bulls Central, but the thing that sparked this conversation to me, it came down to it was an article that came out as if the Bulls and what teams could be interested in Torrey Craig. The Boston Celtics, Denver Nuggets were listed as some of the teams that could be most interested in Torrey Craig, and it's $2.8 million left on his deal here with the Chicago Bulls. He was already kind of not expected to opt in. He did opt in. And even if the Bulls do get back a second-round pick, it's better assets than not getting anything back. And that's what we're going to circle back to. If most Bulls fans remember last season, reportedly the Bulls got offered 2 second-round picks from the Philadelphia 76ers for Andre Drummond. And that is something that, not to say that I didn't like Drummond. I actually like Drum's time here a lot. But I think when you look at that, is that you lost out on a vet and an asset, and you got nothing for him to go to the same team that offered you something back. And I think that's where this Bulls team, I think, would have to be. And when I say vets, you're looking at the Torrey Craigs, the Javon Carters, if you can find somebody to take him. Maybe even the Chris Duartes as a restricted free agent, even though he's still a young guy, that maybe a team wants him and would want to see how he fits on their team around the trade deadline. And with him being a restricted free agent, they can retain his rights if he does fit in. He's a former player that's looked really good on defense and three-point shooting. So those are those aspects of it. The thing that I'm saying here is not necessarily saying that the Bulls should just jettison off every veteran into the atmosphere. But I think you have to review it and say, hey, where this team is now, we're trying to rely on these young guys a little bit more. Yeah, you want some veterans on the team, but there's always going to be a veteran that can take the veteran minimum. Every offseason, there's a veteran that is going to take the vet minimum. Maybe it is to come to a younger team. Maybe it is to rehab their value in 1 year. And if you can get an asset for the guys that are currently on your roster to help replenish some of what you've given up to build this team, I think that's something that the Bulls have to explore personally. I think you have to do that. And again, yeah, a second-round pick, you're not necessarily looking at a second-round pick turning into something great for you, even though Ayo Dosunmu is really looking like he's going to do that for the Bulls. but there's more assets you can use to maybe trade up, right? If you do have a first round pick and you want to move up a spot or two, you say, hey, we can give you our first, which is only 2 less than you, with only the second round pick, right? You want to maintain and gain assets because that's what you can use to make smaller deals and to move up in some things or maybe acquire some things later down the road that can help you. And so I think that if, for example, with the Torrey Craig scenario, if Torrey Craig is a player that teams are interested in at the deadline to help add to their run to try to go for a title, if they're offering you a second or 2 seconds or whatever it is, I think the Bulls should take it because, I mean, yeah, unless you just have it for certain from Torrey Craig that he's going to want to stay here and be that veteran off your bench, why not? Because you can always find veterans that are willing to take the vet minimum as long as you give them a role or something to do. And I think that the Bulls are still going to have that. And that's just something that I look at. I'm not saying that a team does not need to have any veterans on it. No, I think you want to have vets on your team, especially if you're still trying to develop guys. You want to have guys that set a tone, that can help mentor, those type of things. But I think ultimately you also have to look at the fact that you still are in asset acquisition mode. And regardless of what happens with your first round pick by the end of this year, you still have to acquire more assets and try to take as many bites at the apple as possible. At least that's my opinion. You guys can let me know what you guys think down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. We're free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube, the Odyssey app, and Amazon Fire TV. So make sure you guys stay tuned in for that. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. Go Bulls, y'all. Peace.